all. This is a video I'm putting together to walk you through essay number 3 and the proposal for essay number 3. That's what's coming up the next couple weeks, so I thought I would talk you through that. We're starting to decide on which topics we want to work on. That's what the discussion forum this week is about. I'm recording this on Sunday afternoon, so I'm expecting more people, hopefully, to participate. So let's just go over to modules, the main page I like to use. Okay, I've collapsed all these. Remember, I created a special module with all the stuff for essay number 3 and essay number 4. And that's where I'll post this video as well. I'll make another video for essay number 4. Well, let's talk about essay number 3 right now. So let me open that up. Responding to the best we could do. So this essay is meant to kind of, it's similar to essay number 2. Essay number 2, you were responding and comparing and contrasting two shorter works. And part of the point of that essay was to work with specific textual evidence from those two essays. So this one, essay number 3, is working with specific textual evidence from a longer work, the graphic novel, to pursue a more complex thesis and theme, right? So it's similar to what we're doing with essay number 2, but in a more extended way. Okay, so the instructions, as usual, there's a timeline of when things are due. So next week, next Sunday, not this Sunday, the 5th, I need to change those dates, I'm sorry. The 12th, your proposal is due. I'll go ahead and change those after I record this video, but that your proposal is due the 12th, and then we'll do peer editing the week after, and the final paper is due on the 19th. Yeah, I don't know. Oh, this is still the instructions from when we were meeting in class. I remember. That's right. Okay, so I'll change those. Sorry about that. Let's get to the actual paper itself, the topic. So, this is a graphic novel by T. Boy. It's a memoir, graphic novel memoir. This is a true story told in this graphic novel forum, this comic book format, I should say. And it requires a specialized kind of reading, right? Because it's different than the essays we've been reading. There's the visual elements as well as the textual, right? If we were to analyze this panel here, right, it's more than just the words. The words are important, and you can analyze the words, of course, but it's also what's happening visually, right? We have her thinking through, right, with you can see the ellipses separating these boxes of text, right? She's thinking through this issue. This is her thought process kind of being represented here, and you can see her working through it as an artist. She's drawing, but then in the background we have this kind of ghostly image of a turbulent sea, and this is of course the sea that her parents escaped from Vietnam on, right, in those boats, as we see later in the book. This is that memory, that kind of ghostly background to all of her present work that she's doing in the foreground of the image, right? And notice how the image breaks through the frame, right? So it seems to spill out outside of the control that she's exerting on her memories as an artist, right? She's putting her thoughts in little boxes, but the actual memories are spilling out from that frame. So anyways, this is what I mean by, this takes a different kind of reading than just an essay, as just a text of words. Sorry about my voice. I'm a little froggy right now. And this is what we want to do in this essay. This is why we're just concentrating on the one work. We're not bringing in secondary sources. We're just, unless you choose number 5, which is slightly different. But for most of you, you'll just be working on the book itself. So anyways, you want to focus on the words and the visual elements. And you want to choose one of these 5 prompts when you think about your essay, right? So here's the first question. How is the family story influenced by or connected to the social history and events around them? How and why does T. Boy compare and contrast the Vietnamese and American views of the Vietnam War? Right. So this is getting into the history of what was happening in Vietnam when they left. How did that influence them? Right. You might think about, her parents, where they came from, what social positions they came from, how that was kind of destroyed by what was happening, and they were forced to flee. And as we were talking about in class weeks ago, when we talk about refugees, we often think about, the very desperate people fleeing from war. But as we see in the book, right, that her parents are not necessarily destitute people. They have careers, they have jobs, and it's interesting to see how the events in their country, through no fault of their own, force them to leave in the way they do. So that's number one. Number two, how do geography and their surroundings affect the various family members? So this is an interesting one to get into. There's tons of stuff about the actual physical surroundings that they're in. Again, you might think about the kind of places they lived in Vietnam versus some of the places they lived at in America when they moved there, the different places they lived and how that affected them, the very different realities they had to live with, just represented by their physical surroundings. And then the third one, what does T. Boy mean by the refugee reflex? And she talks about this on page 305. So this is jumping ahead from where we are right now as a group, but if you want to go ahead and read that, there's an interesting scene that she includes in the book where her family is fleeing from a fire in their apartment complex, and their reactions to this fire are perhaps different than people who didn't go through the refugee experience, and that's what she's talking about. And it's a very kind of like key scene to the book because it gives you a real insight into the kind of baggage that she's trying to unpack in this book, right? So it's all about trauma, personal, national, family trauma that's included in this idea of the refugee reflex. Okay, so that would be unpacking that idea, thinking about how that operates in the novel. Number four, what lessons about immigration and refugees can be learned from the best we could do? So this is a little broader. If you wanted to expand on some of the things you're working on in your second paper, this would be a good one to choose, right? Because you could think about, the ways, there's been a lot of conversations in the perusal for chapter 2, I think it is, where there's that scene where a boy spits in T Boy's face, or father's face, Bo's face, and the kind of racism and xenophobia that they face. So those would be the kind of things you might want to think about there. Expand on what you're working on for essay number 2, perhaps, if you found something interesting there that you'd wanted to maybe develop further in this essay. Okay, so that would be a prompt. And then the fifth one's a little bit different. So compare this memoir to a poem called This Be the Verse. And I think I linked that, or you can look it up. There's great readings on YouTube. It's a very pessimistic poem about what baggage parents give to their children. And perhaps when you get to the end of The Best We Could Do, you might want to think about, is she as pessimistic as Larkin is? Larkin's very pessimistic about what family does. He's not a big fan of having children and passing on the problems of one generation to the next, whereas T-Boy seems to have a different conclusion. But anyways, that would be an interesting comparison between the two things if you're interested in that, especially if you like poetry and you want to work on something a little more, I don't know, English studenty. That might be something to think about. Okay, no matter what theme you focus on, you want to think about all these issues, not just the words, but also the graphics, right? You should definitely try to include an analysis of both these elements in your paper. And then I'm giving you a breakdown of the structure. So an introductory paragraph. Don't spend too long summarizing plot, right? I've read the book a bunch of times. Just a quick summary, 2 sentences what the book is about, especially focusing on your theme, and then your thesis statement. I've given you, a model what you might use. You don't have to follow this formula, but remember, a good thesis statement is basically, X is true because Y, right? You want to have an argument, and you want to have your basic reasons for that argument. As we were working on a few weeks ago with that thesis statement exercise, you want it to be controversial, you want it to be provable, you want it to be specific, all those things. But the basic formula is, X is true because Y. So take a look at that. And then your second paragraph, brief, more extended kind of summary of the book, but focusing on your theme that you're exploring. You don't have to give me all the details. I've read the book. You want to talk about, how, say, geography plays a role in the book, right, in a general way. Then, in subsequent paragraphs, your next, 3, 4 paragraphs, you want to dig into specific images and passages from the book, so words and graphics. As I note here, be super specific. Remember this is a visual text in addition to a written text, right? So pay attention to both. So you could write a whole paragraph about the way she uses speech bubbles on page whatever, 173. I'm just making that number up. But that's how specific you should be getting. You should be digging into very specific passages. Remember, in academic college level papers, you're always better to dig into very specific things rather than trying to cover the whole book, right? You don't need to cover the whole book in your paper, but you need to say something interesting using very specific evidence in that way, right? That's much more interesting and useful to read for your fellow students in academics. Okay, and do that 3 or 4 times, digging into specific passages, then your final paragraph where you summarize and think about some future way of thinking about this your chosen theme, right? Okay, no research. This is just you and the text. If you use outside sources, that is plagiarism. You must write in a third person perspective. So avoid using I, you, us, we, all those pronouns. Stick to the third person. If you stick to the third person, it's going to lead to a more argumentative and objective formal tone. Okay, so please try to stick to the third person. It's fine to write your rough draft using I and you, and then when you go through and proofread and edit, just turn that all into third person. Okay, so that's about it for now. I'll revise these instructions a little bit because I can see that this was, I didn't revise these after, we went completely online, so I will look at that. But there is that. Oh, let me look at the proposal as well while we're here. Sorry, this is taking so long. I realized it would be such a long video. Okay, so open up the proposal for essay number 3. It takes you here. You'll submit this, submit button right there. But first, you download this this form. Okay. So here's the proposal. Okay. So what I'm asking you to do is come up with 2 prompts that interest you. So let's say I like prompt number 1, I like prompt number 3. Okay, so put those there. Why do you find prompt number 1 interesting? Oh, I don't know, whatever reason. It can be point form, but just make sure it's more than just like fun or something like that, right? Give me a reason. Give me a reason why the other prompt might interest you. And then come up with a potential thesis statement, right? It doesn't have to be fully fleshed out at this point. This is due next Sunday, but on the 12th. But it's good to start thinking about this now. By next week, you should have an idea how you would answer this. But a potential thesis for both. Even if you want to write on this theme here, come up with a second. This is a good way of just generating ideas and maybe rethinking your initial ideas. So then answer a question here. Which of these 2 prompts do you prefer and why? And then I want you to write me a sample body paragraph. This doesn't have to be a full body paragraph. It just has to be an idea. And basically, I'm asking you to practice using quote sandwiches, which we talked about, right? Your top bun, you need to set up the quote. On many pages of the book, T-Boy uses sound effects to achieve whatever thing you want to talk about. And then your specific quote on page 173, T-Boy uses the sound effect, blah, 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 to do da-da-da-da, and then some analysis. By using this sound effect, T-Boy is able to engage the reader in this specific way to achieve whatever effect you're talking about. Okay, so it doesn't have to be a full body paragraph, but we're getting towards, I want you to practice using this idea of a quote sandwich in all of your body paragraphs. And then there are a couple questions to answer afterwards. Okay, so that's about it for now. Once you finish this, save it and upload it to Canvas. Remember to do it in either Word or DocX or PDFs. Please don't send me pages, files in the pages format. I can't open those up. Okay, thank you. That's it for now. Sorry for the long video. I hope that helps you with essay number 3.